When my son said, "Dad, I'm bringing someone special home tonight," I smiled like any proud father would. I had no idea that dinner would be the start of a test, one I never meant to create, but couldn't ignore once it began. The car doors outside slammed one after another, first the driver's side, then the passenger. Through my window I saw Wesley step out, his face glowing like a man who'd found his future. Beside him she appeared, tall, elegant, every step calculated. He waved. "Dad!" "This is Trudy." She smiled, that perfect practice smile that people wear when they've rehearsed being charming. "Mr. Santiago," she said, extending her hand. "Wesley talks about you constantly. This house is beautiful." "How long have you lived here?" 23 years, I replied. Built most of it myself. Her eyes flickered, not with admiration, but calculation. "Really? You must be very skilled. Wesley mentioned you own several businesses." I nodded. "A few." She smiled wider, but her eyes didn't join in. Inside, the smell of my mother's pot roast filled the air. The same meal. Wesley begged for as a boy. I'd polished the floors, set the table, even used Martha's old silverware. As we sat, Trudy's heels clicked against the wood, her gaze sweeping over the room like a silent appraisal. She touched the picture frames on the shelf, her fingers pausing on one of Wesley's graduation photos. "Beautiful craftsmanship," she murmured. But it sounded less like admiration, and more like she was estimating the frame's worth. At dinner, Wesley was glowing. I hadn't seen him this alive since before his mother passed. He kept bragging. Dad started from one auto shop in 1989. Now, he runs 5 across Phoenix. Trudy smiled politely, slicing her meat into tiny, perfect pieces. "That's impressive, so planning to retire soon?" The question hung in the air like a loaded gun. I set my fork down slowly. "Eventually. Haven't decided yet." She nodded, eyes sharp, tone soft. "This layout, what's the square footage here?" "About 2,800. And the property value around here must be..." She stopped mid-sentence, laughed awkwardly. "Sorry, occupational hazard. I analyze everything." Wesley chuckled, completely blind to the direction her curiosity leaned. But I wasn't, and I decided right there to test the truth behind her smile. So I said casually, "I've actually been considering selling one of my investment homes. A duplex in Scottsdale." Her fork froze halfway to her mouth. "Oh, really? What kind of property?" "Just something I picked up back in 2010. Market's good now." Her voice quickened slightly. "How much are you asking?" "Haven't decided yet," I said, hiding my grin. Her reaction told me everything. That flash in her eyes, greed disguised as interest. She leaned forward. "I know great real estate agents, if you'd like me to connect you." I just nodded, changing the subject. But inside, I'd already seen enough. Halfway through dessert, Wesley's phone buzzed. He excused himself to take a call on the patio. "Work emergency," he mouthed, and the moment the door clicked behind him, her entire face changed. The smile dropped. The warmth vanished. Her tone dropped low, colder, sharper. "So, Mr. Santiago," she said, stacking the plates with machine-like precision. "Let's talk business, shall we?" The second Wesley's footsteps faded toward the back patio. Silence filled the house, thick, heavy, and cold. Trudy didn't even pretend anymore. Her shoulders relaxed, her expression sharpened into something calculating. She stacked the plates with precision, her diamond ring catching the kitchen light. "So, Mr. Santiago," she said, her tone smooth but dripping with authority. "Wesley tells me you've done quite well for yourself. 5 shops, a couple of houses, retirement coming soon. You must be comfortable." I leaned against the counter, watching her. "I manage." She looked up. No warmth, no pretense this time. "Good. Because when Wesley and I get married, I expect stability. You know, a foundation. He's got dreams, and I don't want him distracted by financial stress." The way she said financial stress made my jaw tighten. "Wesley's always been independent," I replied. "He's built a lot on his own." She gave a soft laugh, the kind that doesn't reach the eyes. "Of course. But independence doesn't buy a home in Scottsdale." Her words hit like a brick wrapped in silk. I folded my arms. "And what exactly do you mean by that?" She placed the dishes in the sink, turned to face me fully, and leaned one hand on the counter. "I mean," she said slowly, tilting her head, "you've had your life. Mr. Santiago, you've built your legacy. Maybe it's time you invest in your son's future. Buy them a house, something they can start their lives in. It's the least a father could do." The nerve of her tone, calm, entitled, practiced, almost made me laugh. But I stayed silent, letting her dig her own hole. She continued, eyes glinting. Look, I know men like you, hard-working, old-fashioned, but if you really love your son, you'll set him up right. A nice home, a proper place. I'm not asking for much. Not asking for much. Just a house. In Scottsdale. I studied her. There was no affection in her voice. No warmth when she said my son's name. Just strategy. Every sentence was an investment. Every smile a transaction. What does Wesley think about this? I asked finally. She smiled again. The same fake one from the driveway. Wesley doesn't like talking about money. He's too sentimental. That's why I'm coming to you directly. I think you understand the practical side better. Ah, there it was. The real reason for dinner. The charm, the curiosity, the perfectly timed compliments, all rehearsed. I looked her dead in the eyes. And what happens if I say no? She didn't blink. Her smile stayed, but her voice lost its sweetness. Then maybe Wesley starts realizing how unfair it is that he's been carrying this relationship alone. Maybe he realizes love isn't enough when money's tight. And maybe, she paused, straightening her posture, maybe I realize I deserve someone who can give me more. The words hung in the air like a dagger. Wesley's shadow moved behind the patio door, still on the phone, unaware of the venom inside his house. I stared at her. This woman who thought she could blackmail a father with his own son's happiness. And in that quiet, something in me hardened. I smiled slowly, calmly. Interesting, I said. You remind me of someone. Her brow furrowed. Who? My ex-wife, I said simply. She left when she realized love wasn't a business plan. The flicker in her eyes, a brief defensive, and told me everything. Before I could say another word, the patio door opened. Wesley stepped back in, smiling. Everything okay in here? Trudy spun around instantly. That perfect sweetness snapping back into place like a mask. Of course, honey. Your dad and I were just chatting about family plans. I smiled too. But this time, mine was different. Because I had a plan now, and it wasn't going to end the way she imagined. That night after they left, the house felt heavier than usual. Wesley's laughter had barely faded from the driveway before silence filled the walls again. A silence that hummed with anger I wouldn't show anyone. I poured myself a cup of black coffee instead of whiskey. My hands didn't shake, but my thoughts did. Her voice replayed in my head, smooth, deliberate. You'll buy us a house. It's the least a father could do. That sentence told me everything I needed to know about Trudy. It wasn't love that brought her here. It was the hunt for stability, and I'd just been marked as her prey. I opened my old laptop, the same one I'd used to manage my auto shops for years. I still had a few contacts, people who owed me favors. Mechanics, accountants, even a private investigator who once helped me track down stolen equipment. And tonight I needed him for something different. The clock hit 11:42 p.m. when I sent the message. Need a background check. Name, Trudy Miles, lives in Phoenix. Send me everything by morning. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the framed photo of Wesley and me fishing on the Salt River. Both of us, sunburned, grinning, holding a trout between us like it was gold. He deserved someone who looked at him the way I looked at that picture, not someone who measured his worth in square footage. By morning, my phone buzzed. The report came through. I skimmed the pages, and with each line, my stomach sank further. Unpaid credit cards, 2 previous engagements, both broken off months before the wedding, and 1 lawsuit sealed by settlement, involving an older man who had mysteriously transferred property to her name before his business collapsed. I sat back in my chair. Well, I muttered, you're even worse than I thought. I printed the pages, slid them into a manila folder, and placed it under my arm before heading to the auto shop. Wesley called around noon. Dad! Trudy loved dinner last night. She says you two hit it off. I smiled tightly even though he couldn't see it. We had an interesting talk. That's great. She said she might swing by your shop later with lunch. Wants to get to know your world better, her words. Of course she did. When she arrived, the shop smelled of grease and rubber, just how I liked it. She wore a beige dress that probably cost more than a month's rent for some of my mechanics. Mr. Santiago, she greeted, voice smooth as ever. I brought you a sandwich. Thought you might need a break. Kind of you, I said, wiping my hands on a rag. So, you like visiting the workplace of a mechanic? Her lips curved slightly. I like seeing where the family's money comes from. There it was again, the mask slipping just for a second. I played along. You know, you remind me of the investors I used to deal with. Always thinking 2 steps ahead. She tilted her head. Smart people do. I took the sandwich, set it aside, and reached under the counter for the folder. Her eyes followed the motion, curious. What's that? She asked. Just some paperwork I've been reviewing, I said casually. You might find it interesting. I slid it toward her, the manila folder slightly open. Her name, bold and black, peeked from the first page. Her fingers froze halfway to the sandwich bag. Background check, I said quietly. You're thorough with your questions. Trudy, I figured you wouldn't mind me being the same. She blinked once, twice, then laughed softly, but it didn't sound confident anymore. Wow, you don't waste time, do you? I don't like surprises, I replied, especially when it comes to my son. Her expression hardened. The act was officially over. So what now? She asked, folding her arms. You going to tell Wesley and ruin his engagement? I met her gaze, steady and unblinking. No, not yet. I'll give you one chance to do the right thing. Her jaw tightened. And what's that supposed to mean? It means you walk away, cleanly. No drama, no excuses. Tell Wesley you aren't ready for marriage. Because if you don't... I leaned closer, my voice low but sharp. I'll show him what kind of woman you really are. And I'll make sure everyone else at that wedding hears it too. Her breath caught. She didn't expect the old mechanic to have this much bite left in him. But I wasn't done. You wanted a house, I said, picking up the folder again. So here's the deal. I'll buy you one. But it's going to be a one-way ticket out of our lives. The silence that followed was thick enough to cut with a wrench. She didn't speak, just glared, eyes flashing with quiet fury. And for the first time, I saw her without the polish, without the control, a woman cornered by the truth. Then she smiled. You think you've won, Mr. Santiago, she whispered. But you don't know how well I play this game. I smiled right back. We'll see whose game it is when the wedding starts. The morning of the wedding felt unnaturally quiet. No birds outside, no hum of my phone, just the ticking of the old kitchen clock and the sound of my heartbeat matching it. I had barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Wesley's face, so proud, so certain that this woman was his future. He didn't deserve humiliation, but he deserved the truth. By 9:00 a.m., the suit was pressed, the car was fueled, and the folder, the same manila one with her secrets, sat neatly in my inside jacket pocket. I stared at it for a long moment before slipping it in. That paper wasn't just ink and facts. It was my insurance policy and my son's salvation. The venue was a grand hotel on the edge of town. Too expensive, too polished, just like her. As I stepped into the lobby, I saw Trudy across the room, standing in a halo of photographers and bridesmaids. Her smile was dazzling, her eyes bright with victory. She looked like she'd already won. Mr. Santiago, she greeted me with practiced warmth, her white dress glimmering under the chandeliers. You clean up well. Wesley's waiting in the groom's suite. He's nervous. I nodded politely. I'll go see him. As I walked past her, I caught her whisper something to her maid of honor. Something I couldn't fully hear, except one word, house. The ceremony began at noon. Guests filled the rows. Colleagues, relatives, even some of my old mechanics. Everyone smiling, everyone blind. The string quartet started. Wesley stood tall at the altar, adjusting his tie. Eyes locked on the doors at the end of the aisle. Then she appeared. Trudy glided forward like a scene out of a magazine. Perfect hair, perfect grace, perfect lie. Wesley's face softened instantly. And right then, I knew he still had no idea what kind of woman he was marrying. The vows began, hers, flawless and tearless. I promise to stand by you, she said sweetly. In wealth and in challenge, in comfort and in hardship. My jaw tightened at that last word, hardship. She wouldn't last a week in hardship. Then it was Wesley's turn. He spoke from the heart, every word raw, real, filled with love that she didn't deserve. Even the guests dabbed their eyes. But I wasn't watching them. I was watching her, the slight fidget in her hands, the way her gaze kept flicking toward me, quick, nervous, hidden behind her practiced smile. She knew I had her truth, and she knew it was coming. After the officiant's words, the room erupted in applause. They kissed, turned, and walked down the aisle as husband and wife. That's when I stood. The microphone was meant for toasts, polite words, light laughter. But my voice cut through the air with calm precision. Excuse me, I said, smiling faintly. Before we all head to the reception, I'd like to say a few words. A proud father moment. The crowd clapped politely. Trudy froze in place, her hand tightening around Wesley's arm. "Dad," Wesley whispered, surprised but happy. "Go ahead." I took the mic, letting silence settle over the room. "When Wesley was little," I began, "he used to ask me why I worked so hard. Why I missed dinners, holidays, birthdays sometimes. I told him the truth. I was building something for him, a future he could be proud of." I glanced toward Trudy, and today I thought that future was finally here, until I learned that some people don't see family. They see opportunity. A few guests shifted uncomfortably. Trudy's smile flickered, then returned. "Mr. Santiago," she said, voice sweet but trembling slightly. "This really isn't—" I raised a hand gently. "Please, Trudy, let me finish." I reached into my jacket and pulled out the folder. The beige paper looked harmless under the lights, but inside it was dynamite. "I did what any father would do," I continued, voice steady. "I wanted to know who was joining our family, who was marrying my son." I opened the folder slowly. The crowd leaned forward. Trudy's face turned pale. "Turns out," I said, flipping the first page, "this isn't her first engagement, or even her second. And both of those men had something in common. They were generous. Until they weren't." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Wesley turned to her, his expression shifting from confusion to disbelief. "Trudy, what is he talking about?" She shook her head too quickly. "He's lying. He's just trying to ruin us." I held up another page, the lawsuit report. "Then there's this." A civil suit, settled quietly. A business owner who transferred property to her right before his company went bankrupt. The room buzzed. People whispering, eyes darting between her and me. The perfect bride's mask cracked in real time. Wesley took a step back. "Trudy, is that true?" She tried to speak, but her lips quivered, words stumbling out in fragments. "Wesley, it's not what you think." The officiant looked lost. The guests sat frozen, and I stayed calm, not gloating, not angry, just finished. "I built my life on honesty and hard work," I said finally. "And I won't let my son build his on lies." Then I placed the folder on the table beside the altar and turned toward the exit. Behind me, I heard the chaos begin, whispers turning to shouting, her voice breaking, Wesley calling my name. But I didn't stop, because the truth had finally done what I needed it to. It broke her act, and now the world would see who she really was. The hotel lights faded behind me as I walked out into the warm Arizona evening. The air smelled faintly of jasmine and asphalt, the kind of smell that used to mean peace after a long day at the shop. Tonight, it just smelled like endings. I didn't look back. Not when guests shouted, not when the murmurs followed, not when I heard Wesley's voice calling, "Dad, wait!" I got in my truck, closed the door, and just sat there. My hands were steady on the steering wheel, but my chest felt heavy, heavier than it had in years. I'd done what I needed to do, but it didn't feel like victory. It felt like loss, because the truth always costs something. By the time I got home, my phone was already lighting up. Messages, missed calls, voicemails. One from Wesley, two from Trudy, and one unknown number I didn't bother opening. I placed the phone face down on the counter, poured myself some coffee, and sat in silence as the sun began to rise through the blinds. The next 2 days passed quietly. The shop ran itself. My manager handled things. My employees knew better than to ask questions. Everyone in town had heard about the wedding incident. Word travels fast when a scandal smells this good. By the third morning, the phone rang again. This time I answered. "Dad?" Wesley's voice cracked through the speaker. Tired, heavy, older. "Can I come by?" I hesitated, then nodded even though he couldn't see it. "Doors open." An hour later, he pulled into the driveway, the same truck I helped him buy years ago when business was good. He stepped out slowly. No suit, no tie, no bride. Just my son. He looked at me, eyes red. "You were right," he said quietly. "About everything." I motioned him inside. We sat at the kitchen table, the same one where he used to do homework while I balanced ledgers and ate reheated leftovers. He ran a hand through his hair. She disappeared, deleted everything. Social media, number, all of it. Took her stuff from the apartment while I was at work. I nodded, saying nothing. She said, he swallowed hard. She said I embarrassed her, that you poisoned her against me. But after she left, I started digging too. Dad, she was still messaging her ex, the one from Tucson, the one who gave her that car. I leaned back, letting out a slow breath. I'm sorry, son. He shook his head. No, don't be. You saved me. I was too blind to see it. For a while, we just sat there, listening to the quiet hum of the fridge. Then he spoke again. You know, when you started talking at the wedding, I was angry. I thought you were trying to humiliate her or control me. But when I saw her face, the way she panicked, I knew. I looked at him, my chest tightening with something halfway between pride and sadness. You don't owe me thanks. Yeah, I do, he said, voice steady now. You taught me to tell the difference between love and leverage. He smiled faintly, small but real. And for the first time in weeks, I saw my son again. As he stood to leave, he turned at the door. I'm taking a break, he said. From relationships. From everything. I want to help you at the shop for a while. Just get grounded again. I smiled. You sure about that? Work here's not easy. He grinned. That's the point. After he left, I went out to the porch. The air was warm again. That golden kind of light that makes the world look cleaner, like a second chance. I thought it was over. But that night, as I locked up, headlights flashed across my driveway. A black sedan, windows tinted. It pulled up slowly. My gut tightened. The door opened and then there she was. Trudy. No wedding dress, no smile, just cold fury. She stepped out, heels clicking against the gravel. I should have known you'd dig, she said, voice sharp. You old men always think you're smarter than everyone else. I didn't flinch. And yet here you are, still talking to me. Her lips curled. You think you embarrassed me? You think you won? I crossed my arms. I don't think I know. She took a step closer, her perfume sharp and heavy in the night air. You ruined my life, she hissed. And I'm not leaving until I get something back. I looked at her, calm, grounded, unshaken. Lady, I said slowly, you already got more than you deserved. For a second, she didn't respond. Then she laughed, that same hollow, practiced laugh I'd first heard in my kitchen. We'll see, she said, eyes glinting. How much you really know about winning. Then she turned, got in the car, and drove away. The dust settled slowly across my driveway, and as her taillights disappeared into the dark, I knew this wasn't over. Not yet. 2 days passed after Trudy's visit, but the unease stayed. Even the air in my house felt tighter, like it knew she wasn't done. I changed my locks, updated the cameras around the porch, and made sure every gate creaked loud enough to wake the dead. By the third night, the phone rang again. No number, no name, just static. Then a voice. You took everything from me, Jose. It was her. Calm, deliberate, almost theatrical. You think you can humiliate me in front of everyone and walk away? You'll see what happens when people hear your secrets. The line went dead. I didn't answer. Didn't call back. But I smiled, because that call told me she was cornered. When people start talking about revenge, it means they've already lost control. Still, I wasn't naive. I'd spent 30 years running shops, dealing with hustlers, con artists, fake inspectors, people who smiled while planning your downfall. Trudy was no different, so I started preparing. I called an old friend, Pete, a retired detective who now handled security for local businesses. Need your help, I said. I've got someone who doesn't understand when to quit. He chuckled. The wedding woman? Yeah, and she's getting bold. By noon, Pete installed 2 new cameras, one on the gate, one above the garage, both linked to my phone. Then he handed me a small flash drive. Just in case she decides to get creative, he said. This records everything automatically. That night I finally slept. Not because I felt safe, but because I was ready. The following afternoon, a knock rattled the door. Firm, impatient. I checked the monitor. Trudy, no makeup this time. Hair messy, eyes red. She looked less like a villain and more like someone unraveling. I opened the door halfway. What do you want, Trudy? She pushed a folded paper toward me. A legal envelope. You think you're smart, don't you? Well, I talked to a lawyer. Wesley owes me for emotional damages. He promised me a life, a house, security. I'm getting something out of this whether you like it or not. I took the envelope calmly. You filed a claim. Not yet, she snapped. But I will. You humiliated me. You'll pay. I stepped back, pretending to read it. Then I raised my eyes. You might want to call your lawyer again. Ask him what happens when evidence of fraud surfaces during a civil claim. Her eyes narrowed. What are you talking about? I reached for the small remote on my table and pressed play. From the speaker, her own voice filled the porch, the recording from the night she visited. You ruined my life, and I'm not leaving until I get something back. Her face drained of color. I tilted my phone toward her, the security cam timestamp glowing clearly. Pete installed the system yesterday, I said quietly. You just gave me your confession. And if you try to drag my family into court, this goes to the judge first. She froze. Then the anger broke. Tears, real ones this time, welled in her eyes. You don't understand, she whispered. I didn't mean to hurt him. I just wanted stability. I've been broke, scared, used. Wesley was good. I panicked. For a second, I saw the person behind the mask. Not innocent, but desperate. Still, pity wasn't going to fix anything. Walk away, Trudy, I said softly. Take what's left of your life and build something honest with it. If you keep pushing, I'll protect my son, and then you'll lose more than just money. She stared at me, silent, shaking, then turned, got into her car, and drove off. I watched the dust trail fade into the horizon and felt the tension in my shoulders finally ease. Not victory, not yet, but quiet. Inside, I sat down, looked at the envelope still in my hand, and tore it clean in half. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about closure. Still, deep down, I knew people like Trudy never disappeared for good. They reappear when you least expect them. And this time, when she did, the world would see who she really was. 3 months passed. The dust settled, or at least I thought it had. Wesley moved on quietly, throwing himself into work, traveling, trying to rebuild his confidence. He didn't talk much about Trudy anymore, and I never forced the subject. Sometimes silence does more healing than 1,000 words. Then one late morning I got a call from an unknown number. The voice on the other end froze me mid-sentence. Mr. Ramirez, this is Detective Collins from Scottsdale PD. We need you to come down to the station. It's about your son's fiancée, Gertrude Sanders. I drove there with my heart thudding in my chest, unsure whether it was anger, dread, or both. When I arrived, the detective slid a folder across the table. Inside were photographs, documents, bank transfers, and one picture that made my stomach twist. Trudy, smiling, with another man. Not new, not recent, old. From before she met Wesley. Detective Collins leaned back. She's part of a long-running property scam. Targets older business owners or their family members. Gets engaged, manipulates, pushes for assets, then disappears. We've been tracking her for months. Your son was almost victim number 5. I exhaled slowly, my hands tightening around the file. So all my instincts, every uneasy glance, every calculated smile, had been right. But there was one thing that didn't fit. The detective said, "We think she's trying to flee the state. If you hear from her again, call us immediately." I nodded, and for a while life went on. Until the day of the wedding. No, not Wesley's, his best friend Daniel's. Wesley had agreed to attend, and after some convincing, so did I. It was in a vineyard just outside town. Soft music, golden sunset. The kind of place that almost makes you forget bad memories. Almost. Because halfway through the ceremony, just as the bride and groom exchanged vows, I saw her, Trudy, standing near the tree line in a pale dress, watching, her eyes locked on Wesley like a ghost who didn't realize she'd already been buried. I felt my pulse rise. I whispered to my son, "Don't look, but she's here." He stiffened. "How do you know?" "I just do." We slipped quietly out of the rows of chairs and walked around the vineyard fence. She didn't notice us until I spoke. "Didn't expect to see you here, Trudy." She froze, half turning, clutching her purse tight. Her smile twitched like it was stitched on wrong. "Jose, I came to apologize." Wesley stood behind me, silent. Her eyes darted between us, searching for sympathy, for an opening, for anything she could still control. "I wasn't going to run," she said. "The detectives, they don't understand." I loved him. I still love him. "Please, just listen." I raised a hand. "You had your chance to love him, Trudy. You chose money instead." Her breath hitched, and for a moment she looked smaller, like the arrogance had finally drained out. "I was scared," she whispered. "You don't know what it's like to grow up with nothing. Every man I've ever met wanted something. I just wanted to feel safe. Wesley was different, but I ruined it." Wesley finally stepped forward. His voice broke slightly, but it was steady. "You didn't ruin it, Trudy. You ruined yourself." The words hit harder than any slap. She dropped her gaze, trembling. And then, the blue and red lights flashed behind the vines. The detective's car pulled up, slow and certain. Trudy's voice cracked. "You called them?" I looked at her quietly. "You called me first, remember?" 2 officers stepped forward. She didn't fight, didn't yell, just turned once, eyes wet, and whispered, "I really did love you, Wes." They led her away, her figure fading against the sunset. That night, Wesley and I sat on the porch, the same spot where it all began. He stared into the dark. The kind of stare that comes when the heart is half broken, half freed. "I guess you were right about her," he said. I smiled faintly. I didn't want to be right. I just wanted you safe. We sat there quietly, listening to the crickets, the hum of faraway cars, the world slowly returning to normal. After a while, Wesley said something I'll never forget. "You know, Dad, maybe you didn't just save me. You might have saved a lot of others, too." I looked at him. My son, older now, wiser, calmer, and felt that rare, quiet peace that comes after chaos finally ends. "Maybe," I said softly. "But next time I hope it's just dinner and laughter. No detectives, no lessons." He chuckled, shaking his head. "No promises." We both laughed. And as the night settled, I realized something powerful. Not every battle is won through anger. Some are won by staying patient, paying attention, and letting the truth do the talking. Because in the end, it wasn't revenge that exposed her. It was the truth she kept trying to hide. And that truth, like light, finds its way out every time. She thought she could buy her way into our family. But all she did was sell her own truth. And the price? Everything she once pretended to love.